The hashtag war on Trump is on. Macy's is removing Trump's products from their stores, NBC ending their relationship with him, and Univision too, all because they don't like his politics. But Trump is not backing down. Seems the more Donald is attacked, the more people just actually like him and gather around him. You're seeing independents liking him, more and more Republicans who never liked him before. It is absolutely galvanizing his support. Could NBC, Macy's, and others push Donald right over the top? Could they win the presidency for Donald? Unintended consequences. Here to discuss is Matt Rooney from the SaveJersey.com. Matt, welcome back to the show. Good to have you.
Great to be here.
Well, I have to ask you about your governor, Christie, because he just got in the race yesterday. What do you think of his announcement to run for president?
Look, I think he's had a great 24 hours. He got the first endorsement of any governor this time around. Paul LePage jumped in today and backed him from Maine. And listen, he's at his best when he's engaged in retail politics, on the stump, talking about himself, connecting one-on-one with voters. We'll get into his record later, but that's how you win in New Hampshire, by shaking hands, kissing babies, coming across as a real person. It resurrected Bill Clinton's presidential campaign back in the 90s. Maybe it'll do the same for Christie.
I don't know. You know, I was in New Hampshire for the last primary and spent an inordinate amount of time there. I can't remember why I stayed so long, but I just was there for a long time and got to know a lot of the people in New Hampshire. And it seemed to me like anyone who was even a little bit right of center was very libertarian, like rabidly libertarian. And I just don't know, because I see Christie as a big government guy. Like, you know, I believe that, you know, I know that he didn't raise taxes and those things, but I kind of see him as somebody who thinks that the government can do a good job of managing things if they would just do it from a Republican perspective. I hate to put words in his mouth, but that's sort of how I'd sum it up. Do you think New Hampshire, that sort of thing flies?
You better hope so, because after that, map gets a lot redder, right? You know, it's hard to see Christie doing well in a primary in South Carolina, for instance.
Right.
But listen, and I think as much as folks like you and myself, Dr. Gina, that pay intense attention to the issues would like to think that everybody does the same, they don't. People don't change that much from high school. These are still popularity contests. I'm not saying issues don't matter, but in a small state like New Hampshire, the interaction you have with a candidate at a diner is almost as important as their position on trade tariffs. So I'm not saying Christie doesn't have a very large hill to climb. Like Donald Trump, somebody else we're talking about today, he has very high negatives among Republican voters, but never, ever, ever underestimate a charm offensive. Christie knows how to initiate one, and he's won over a lot of Democrats and independents and non-traditional Republican voters right here in the Garden State.
All right, then. Well, we'll be watching. But then there's Trump. He's running second in some polls and climbing. Do you think the attacks on him are having a negative effect or a more galvanizing effect for him? People, I mean, I think about, he wasn't, you know, from a strictly psychological perspective, he wasn't the most sympathetic character ever, Donald Trump. You couldn't really think of really any reason to feel sorry for him other than the fact that he apparently does not realize that comb over is offensive. And so now that he literally has all of these major corporations canceling him, at least on social media, I am seeing conservatives begin to rally around him, even down to like Sarah Palin, who, you know, conservatives are going to listen to what she has to say. So what do you have to say?
Yeah, listen, it's hard to have even an ardent capitalist like me shed tears for a billionaire, right? You know,
Right.
Donald's a big boy, he knows what he's doing. I'm sure he'll find a way to make money out of this. At the same time, listen, I think plenty of Americans, even those that aren't ardent conservatives, are just tired of this political correctness crusade, right? We see it right now with the Confederate flag. Listen, I'm a New Jersey guy. I'm a unionist. I've got a big picture of Abraham Lincoln hanging in my office. I'm no fan of the Confederacy. At the same time, anybody who thinks a flag had anything to do with the shooting that was perpetrated by a guy who seems objectively crazy, they're kidding themselves.
Yeah.
People are tired of this. And I think, again, even folks that aren't particularly ideological, they're going to respond to someone who stands up, and even if they do it a little sloppily, says, come on, folks, let's wake up. Let's stop being crazy here.
Yeah.
And
Funny thing, I have a lot of Mexican friends here who are Mexican Americans, who are immigrants, and maybe even some of them spent time as illegal immigrants here. And do you know, across the board, they are loving Donald Trump. because they're on the border. You know, we live in San Diego, we broadcast from here, and we see the problems that happen. One of my own staff's husband was actually hit by an illegal. So you think about that in a car. I mean, you think about those kinds of things, and these are real life issues that are happening to people. Also, so happens that we in San Diego are the human trafficking capital of the world, and you just have to wonder how much the illegal activity that happens here, how much of it is related to that. So I am seeing a phenomenon I would have never in my life predicted. But if conservatives don't agree with a leftist, they're forced to do business with them, like to bake them a cake, for instance. But if a leftist disagrees with someone on the right-hand side, like Donald Trump, it's okay, they can cease doing business with them. The double standard here, is this on your last nerve as much as it is on mine?
Oh, yeah, look, we know what tolerance means to the left. Tolerance means agreeing with them, okay? So Donald Trump, because he's worth $8 billion or whatever he currently claims, he has the courage to stand up to them and call them out for it. Unfortunately, and this is where I kind of depart with the Donald Dr. Gina, even though I think that conservatives win elections by being conservative and speaking truth to power, we have to accept the fact that we've lost the culture here. So if we're going to elect a nominee, it's one thing to be able to get 18% of the vote in a crowded field in a poll in New Hampshire for a Republican primary. But if we're going to win a general election, we do have to be a little smarter about how we speak about this stuff. The Donald is an entertainer. So, yeah, he's getting lots of retweets online, but, you know, I'm not sure that's exactly how you bring in voters in eastern Pennsylvania when you're trying to win a general. Maybe in the Southwest, it is a problem down there. There's no doubt about it. But we need somebody that can take that message and transmit it to folks that aren't predisposed to vote Republican.
I don't know. He is a reality TV guy. I mean, I could just see that translating clear across America. We'll just have to see. But anyway, thank you so much for being with us. We appreciate you.